Hi everyone, my name's Ian and I'd like to welcome you to online church today. It's great that you can join us. Also, just a reminder for our kids and our families who are watching, and it's great that you guys can all join us, but also up on our kids' YouTube page, there's our Kids Church Online for this week. So why don't you go there after our family spot and watch that in together. Also, there's a bunch of resources on our webpage under our family resources, whole bunch of questions, colouring in sheets, all that sort of stuff. So why don't you go there, print them out, and even send us a photo to show that you're doing them at home. Well, what have we learned about over the last couple of weeks? Well, we've been learning about the book of 2 Samuel, and we've been learning about David's kingdom, the ups and the downs. Now let me tell you about a story to start with. The other week, a couple of weeks ago, my family went for a walk down at Watermulla Beach, and it was beautiful. We walked across the little stream up onto the sand, and then a little bit further up to where the lagoon is and where the waterfall is. It was beautiful, and it was still until my boys picked up some rocks and they threw them into the middle of the lagoon, and splash! Well, it didn't end there. The ripples started to go out and splash out a little bit further from where the rock went in, all the way till they reached the edge of the lagoon. Now we're going to find out today about how those ripples went out from David's sin in his life. We're going to find out a little bit more about that today. But today you are going to need to grab your mum or your dad's phone or your iPad for the family spot today, because what we're going to do is we're going to use a bunch of emojis to be able to tell the story today. What you can do to start with is type in, "This is what we learned from 2 Samuel chapters 13 to 15 today." Okay, you can type that in there, and then all the little emojis that are going to come up, you can copy those and put them on the phone and send it to somebody to find out, so you can tell them what you found out about church today, or you can even send it to me. Right, over the last couple of weeks, we've learned that even though David was a good king, he wasn't a perfect king. He sinned, and his sin led to more sin and more sin, just like the ripples in the pond. Now remember, he wanted Bathsheba as his own wife, and then he made plans that ended up in Uriah's death. It was not good. Well, David was confronted by Nathan, and he was made aware of his sin, and eventually he said sorry. God forgave him, but sadly, the consequences of his sin were just like the ripples in the pond. The effects of David's sin started to spread and spread and spread. Because of David's sin, sadly, his son died. Because of David's sin, sadly, his wives would be taken and given to someone else. And sadly, because of David's sin, there was always going to be fighting in his kingdom while he was the king. And worst of all, that fighting was going to happen in his family. His children were even going to attack each other. In fact, one of David's sons, Absalom, turned against his own brother and killed him. Well, he also turned against his father, David, and here's what happened. Well, Absalom was kicked out of the city, but eventually he returned, and straight away he went about making a name for himself. He rode around with horses and a chariot, and 50 men ran ahead of him wherever he went. He made sure everyone saw him. He made sure everyone knew him. He rose early in the morning and sat beside the city gate. And as the people passed into the city, he would ask them, "Why are you going to see the king?" And after hearing what they had said, he would say, "Well, that's a good thing to go and ask the king." Eventually, he would say, "If only there was somebody who would go with you to see the king." And eventually, he asked, "If only I was made a judge, then I would be able to listen to you and make everything right for you." Now, Absalom was very, very cunning. He did this to make everyone like him more, and they liked him more than his father David. Sadly, it worked. After all this, Absalom went to see his father and asked him, "Hey Dad, please let me go off to Hebron and offer sacrifices to God there." Well, his father David agreed. But as soon as Absalom left the city, he began to gather people to himself. And he was cunning, and he was plotting against his father because he wanted to be the king. When David heard about this, he fell to his knees and he cried. He cried for his people, and he cried about what his son was doing to the people. but he was also afraid. And after that, he got up and ran away for his own safety. Do you remember those ripples in the lagoon and how they went on and on and on? Well, David's sin was like that. David's sin had consequences. Boys and girls, our sin is like that too. The effects of our sin go on and on and on, and even though God has forgiven us, the effects of our sin can last a long time. It can affect us and those around us, and sometimes it can feel like it goes on and on forever. But the good news is that it won't go on forever. Jesus died to take away our sin once and for all, and the day is coming in the future where the effects of our sin will be no more. And that's all because of what Jesus has done for us, because he loves us so much. Now we're going to learn a little bit more about that today, and the ripples in the pond, the ripples of sin in King David's life in kids' church today. But we're also going to learn about the ripples of forgiveness that came from the greatest king ever, the King Jesus. Well, how about I pray before we do that? Let me pray. Dear God, we know that we are sinful, and we know that the effects of our sin can go on and on for a long time. We're sorry for our sin. Please forgive us. Please help us look forward to the day that Jesus is coming back, where we know that sin will be no more and the effects of our sin will be gone forever. Thank you so much for Jesus, and we ask these things in his name. Amen. All right, we'll see you in Kids Church.